in real life.
Thank you very much, and wonderful good evening, and welcome back to another virtual domain-driven design meetup. Tonight we have Nick Tune here to go with us through some examples of Wardley mapping in the remote times, and Kenny Schwedler will assist with the technology, with the Miro boards and everything else we need. Today we have not only 4 or 5 people here for a small discussion, but I think we have around 40 people or so, and this will be a massively collaborative session. What we're going to do is I'm going to be the domain expert for the first half an hour, and Nick Tune will go through the example with you and facilitate the Wardley mapping. And after that, we will break out into smaller groups to deep dive into what we've learned and get some hands-on practice. The goal of the whole session is to get an actual hands-on experience and be able to use Wardley mapping tomorrow, because it's nothing magic, it's nothing really hard about it, but a lot of people go on and read about the theory, and we want to take away the fear of just implementing it and doing it yourself. So, welcome, Nick.
Good evening. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I think Friday night, Wardley mapping remotely. This is what Friday nights were really invented for.
Cheers.
It just took humanity a very long time to realize what Friday nights were invented for. And now we've reached that destination. And we're going to do some remote Wardley mapping. So why Wardley mapping? So from my perspective, Wardley mapping was one of those things that rewired my brain. It rewired my brain because it makes you think about how the world is changing, how everything's constantly evolving. And it doesn't really matter what your job is, if you're working in product, if you're a software engineer, if you're an architect. The choices you are making now are you're making bets on what's going to happen in the future. You're making a bet with your architecture, your product roadmap. If we build these things, when we build them, somebody will want to benefit from them. And so with Wardley mapping, you're being very purposeful about thinking how the future is likely to play out. Now, you can't predict the future, but using a Wardley map, I think you can make more realistic predictions based on how your business might evolve, based on how every concept evolves going through these different phases. So my personal journey is I used to read a lot about Wardley mapping. I used to see Simon Wardley tweeting like every day. I'm like, that's a really cool idea. It makes total sense. And it wasn't until last year I tried it myself. And I realized, okay, now I'm trying it. Some bits make sense, but some bits are quite difficult to grasp. The definition of certain concepts. And so that hands-on was the real moment where I was able to use Wardley mapping more effectively, because it forced me to evaluate which bits I didn't really understand. And so that's the purpose of tonight's session. We're going to actually do this and find out which bits we don't understand. And that will remove our barrier to trying it ourselves next time. So as Marco said, two phases to tonight, well, 3 phases. The first phase is to teach you Wardley mapping. We're going to do an interactive example right now where Marco will talk us through his domain. To fill in this Wardley map, we'll be looking at you, the audience, to give us the answers. And Marco will tell us if we're getting close or if we're way off. Once we've done this on his domain, we'll split into breakout groups and you can all try some Wardley mapping yourselves. And then finally, we'll get back together and we'll discuss what some of the groups worked on, and we'll try and take away some lessons and insights. And hopefully the goal of this session is we all feel comfortable to try Wardley mapping next time a situation arises. So I'm going to share my screen. If I can work out how to do this in this UI, share screen, I see a button. I'm going to click it. So can you put your thumb up if you can see a Wardley mapping canvas on my screen? Fantastic. So Marco, we can start the activity. So what was the purpose of this project you worked on, or this project, or what was the thing? What was your domain about?
So the domain is a part of the shift planning that I've been working on for years now. We have a planning department where people plan how their employees should work in the next few months. And then we always do time tracking, and the captured time, we compare that with the planned time. And the difference, there is a very complicated German law that we're not going to into today, but this is necessary to actually calculate how much money people are owed by the company. And because of more and more offsite work, people have to track their time while they are not in the building. So usually we did this in the building with a little clock in the entrance, and we could trust that clock because we could see it. Now we have to actually let people track their time on a mobile device or anything else, and we want to make sure that they really track the time when they're at work and not just, at the morning in the hotel, start tracking their time and then take a shower and then go to work. So the purpose was to get some geolocation on the time tracking to increase the trust that is missing in that department.
Okay, so the purpose of this project, can we say it was to increase the reliability of time tracking to increase trust?
It's not real. The trust was sarcasm. So it's not to increase trust, but to get reliable data. And to actually get rid of fraud, because a lot of people, when they do not get control, they track fraudulent time.
Okay, can we, what domain, what kind of company was this in? What kind of environment was this?
It is healthcare. It's hospitals, and it's old people's homes, and it's even ambulant. So it's tours are driven through multiple people that need a certain treatment. So some person in a specialized car takes a tour around the city and provides treatments. That's the situation we're in.
And was this used? Is this an internal product you're discussing, used by one kind of organization?
No. This is a product that is sold to hundreds of companies, healthcare and hospital companies, basically, or conglomerates, and it is widely used throughout healthcare companies in Germany, but only the German market.
Okay. So, if anyone in the audience has any questions about the domain, you can post your questions in chat right now. Since I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the chat, so I'm going to rely on you, Marco, if that's okay, to take the chat messages.
I'll have my eyes on the chat, and there is no question yet.
Okay.
I'll give people a few seconds to write.
Sure. Cheers.
Cheers.
Alternative, people can also raise their hands and ask the question live on Zoom.
So we get a question. Is it a public app or is it distributed inside a company? Well, it's distributed inside of a company. So we build this application. The company installs a program, and in their servers, it's usually on-premise and not even hosted by us. And then the time tracking, well, that depends now how we want to solve the problem. So in the past, we had, as I said, devices in the house, in the building, that could track little chips. But we also have a website that is in the internal local area network. So we can find a way for mobile phones to access that, or maybe even build a public app with some password or security around it. But the core of the system is inside, it's on-premise. And another question, so that's question number one. Another question is this a tool for everyone in the company or for different roles? Yes. Different roles need different parts of this application. So the workers, they need to track their time. And it's not only to give them a hard time and to make sure that they do not use fraudulent data, but it's also to provide a track record of their work. So they have proof of, hey, I have worked from here to here, and based on this, I can actually go and say, oh, you made a mistake by paying my salary too low or too high, or not that people would say that, but it's time tracking and also holiday planning for the workers. But of course, the people who make the shift plan, they optimize for the patients. So they for the customers, they want to make sure that everybody has enough service provided. And the workers, they optimize for their own time, and then you have the people who care about the finance side, and they want to compare both to figure out, oh, this person is always working too long hours. Maybe we should scope that down because we have to pay extra if they work longer hours. So it's a controlling tool as well. So different roles have different value from the whole system. Okay, 2 more questions came in. Do employees have managed phones, or do they use their personal phone? None so far. We do not have personal phones or managed phones, but both great ideas. Let's explore that. Why is this product successful? Well, it's not yet. We want to make it successful. The whole product is a shift planning tool that has been successful because it provides the intricate calculation that German law requires, from thousands of pages of law actually that change every year in the social services that are the whole shift planning has strict rules, and the timesheet has strict rules, and how to calculate stuff is very, very, very strictly ruled in Germany. And it's not successful because people want to have this, but this takes time off their hands so they can actually do their real job instead of calculating numbers and trying to adhere to all the rules when the software provides a safety net. But this specific thing, this tracking thing that we want to build, that will save the company who gets this product a lot of money because of fraudulent time tracking when people are en route and they just track time that they do not really work at the site where they were supposed to be. Thanks for the questions. Oh, I have one more. Shall I?
Sure, we can take one more.
Okay. Is the first goal to reduce fraud and the second goal to use the data for managing shifts, or have these the same priority? The goal of the whole system is to manage shifts, to plan shifts, and to optimize for work time and also customer satisfaction. But the goal of this spatial trail, this geolocation thing, is only to reduce fraud. So far, I mean, we can come up with cool ideas, but so far that's the reason of why we're building this.
Okay. By the way, I don't know if it was my headphones, but I was picking up a bit of noise when you were speaking sometimes there, Marco.
That should be reduced now.
Cool. So what's the scope we would like to map today? How much of this domain would we like to visualize?
So I would like to visualize the part of the how does this change, especially now in Corona times where people really can't go out in groups, but still there are patients that can't leave their house. People have to go there. How does this tracking service, how would this work? What do we need to build? What do we need to implement? What can we buy? What already exists? So exploring the domain to understand what we need to invent, to build, to maintain, to make this work. And how can we make money off of it?
Okay, so here's my initial attempt at capturing that. What needs to change to be pandemic friendly, and how to monetize in this new environment? Is that okay, or can we be more precise here?
That sounds fine for me so far. Yeah.
All right.
I like that.
Okay. So let's move on to the users. Now, I'd like to put this to the attendees. Who might be the users in this domain? I've got a question here for you, Marco.
Yep. Does the pandemic really have that much influence? I don't know. Since the product isn't launched yet, I'm not sure. So let's think about it. Given that you should not, when you visit someone who is probably infected or has been infected shortly, you should not visit other people afterwards. We need to plan accordingly. And it might be beneficial to actually track that and have additional service to provide. So we can provide, hey, you have been at this place and we know this person has been infected. So afterwards, we saw you contacting other patients, which you were not planned to do. But now we have actual proof that you did or did not do that. So we can probably give health information or risk information from inside of our system.
Okay, so we have some suggestions here for users. So we have hospital staff managers, we have healthcare workers, we have ambulance drivers. Do any of these resonate with how you view the domain, Marco? Do any of these?
Yes,
names?
Healthcare workers and ambulance drivers. In our case, it's the same thing. There is no special driver. It's a person driving the car and going there. We do not do like first aid. So it's not that you have a driver and someone taking care in the car, but it's you prep the car with things you need in the house, and then you go to a place. So it's the same person. Hospital staff managers. Yes, of course, the staff managers. We call them shift planners in this case. They manage who works when and what ability is needed when. So who do we need to, make sure they are not on holiday on that day and stuff like that. And there's also the salary department. I don't know if there's an English word for that. The money people.
Yeah, maybe we can call them payroll team.
Yeah.
Or finance team. Or if it's clear, we can call them salary managers for now until we find a and go with that if it's the clearest name. What would you feel comfortable with?
Salary department or payroll team is both fine by me.
All right, let's go salary department. Do you think we need to keep exploring the users here, Marco, or are you happy we've got the main ones?
Yeah, let me just check. There were some more suggestions, but I think we've got them. Yeah, the government, someone said the government. Not now. So right now, the government is no user of our system, and there might be in the future, let's say, a demand for the data we have. But then there's also, the moral aspect and also the German law preventing us from just giving away patient data and stuff like that to the government just because they ask. But that might change depending on how government goes. Let's not go there now.
And there's one on the YouTube channel. That says the managers of the healthcare workers or the medical data collectors. You talk about.
Yep. Yeah. So we don't have medical data collectors. I was just brainstorming there. It might be something for the future. There's a feature hidden in there that we can explore. It's risky, but it might be beneficial. But so far, we're not tracking patient data. But since we have geolocation, once we do this, we could start doing that. So let's say that's out of scope for the moment.
Okay, but that's also a good thing about Wardley mapping. You can actually start anticipating future needs that aren't met yet and things that may come up in your domain.
Yeah.
So let's talk about user needs now. Firstly, you've got a question for you, Marco. Does the system we're building discriminate between these different kinds of user, or do they all have the same needs? I've got a feeling it looks like they have different needs.
They have very different needs, yeah. So the health workers and ambulance drivers, that's the simplest thing, I think, the simplest one. They have the need of proving that they worked and tracking the hours they worked so they can get the salary they are owed. So if someone orders them to work longer hours, or if a patient just takes more time, you clock in the hours and you'll get the money for the time you've worked.
Okay. Before you move on to the next bit, I wonder if we could ask the audience for their opinions about what the user needs might be here. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, fire your ideas into the chat. What might be the needs of a shift planner? So we've got a clue from Marco that the shift planners don't have the same needs as the ambulance drivers and healthcare workers. So what might be the needs of the shift planner? Control, effective use of employees, allocating time, easy of getting data, plan better. Any of these resonating with you, Marco?
Yeah, well, I've been working in this domain for a while and I've heard all those. The shift planners actually aren't that evil people. They don't want to control people or allocate time. They actually, what they want to do is make sure that the right people are rested enough and able to do the job so that the customer needs can be fulfilled. If there are patients who need a certain treatment, you want to have ambulance workers who can give that treatment. And those should not be coming from an 48-hour shift, but they should have their 1 or 2 days of rest and then work a regular shift to actually cope with the workload. So this is the primary goal in the long term, to make sure that both parties can actually get their needs fulfilled. But there is a specific need that shift planners have, which comes on occasion whenever someone misses their job, when someone gets sick, or when someone just doesn't show up, or when a car breaks down so the person can't really go anywhere anymore. You need immediate response. So I need to know who has time, who has the ability, and if I find multiple people of those, okay, who hasn't worked in the longest time, so that it is fair. And now with location data, we could even see, okay, who's closest, so who has the shortest response time. Those information are important because I need to make sure, oh yeah, the patient is waiting, now there's no one coming, let's make sure we find a replacement quickly. All those things. So there's a long-term shift planning and a short-term shift planning, and both need to be adhered to.
Okay, so the first one was keeping employees healthy. You said they cared about their employees, making sure they were able to work and not being overworked.
Yeah.
The second one was something about when there are people who can't work for some reason, you need emergency cover, perhaps.
Yeah.
So those were the two I picked up amongst that that discussion. Anything you'd say belongs in there too that I haven't got here? Also got some questions in chat around this.
Okay, so I'll start from the bottom. How do you make sure the shifts are done since everything is added manually? It's not added manually. So the software we already have in place has a long-term shift plan, and that is done by the shift planners month in advance. And whenever something changes, they add it to the software. So of course that's done manually, but there is an overall goal of, let's say we need 50 working hours on certain kind of patients in this week, and then you can see if the need is already fulfilled by the hours you planned in. So the long-term thing is a numbers game that you try to find a balance all the time, and the software assists you with warning you if numbers are not met. And in the short term, once a plan is committed and people say, yeah, this is a committed plan, great, let's work like this, but then something happens, then the commitment is already there, and now the commitment needs to be fulfilled by someone else. So then it's just a people allocation problem. The need is already expressed. Now you need to find the people if something happens. Sometimes, rarer than that a coworker gets sick, an employee gets sick, is the other case when a patient stops being sick or needing treatment for whatever reason. So I have my shift, I want to go out and work tomorrow, but now my patients don't need treatment. What do I do now? I'm planned, so if I don't work tomorrow, I lose salary, and I have a protective right. If it's a very short-term plan, I'm still owed some money, so they better plan me to work somewhere else, and that's not always easy or possible. So this is also something where shift planners and ambulance workers have a kind of like a same need at this moment. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'm meandering on one question. Nothing manually, isn't it also a need? Yeah, of course. The more we can automate, the better. That's everybody wants to do good work in healthcare. They don't want to track time or track locations or add numbers. That's like, let's automate all that. Nobody would be mad about that. Let's automate as much as we can.
So you're saying automate everything?
It's always a trade-off. So as long as the trade-off is positive, yes, automate as much as we can, because the jobs of the people, of shift planners, are not about making additions to a software system. It's about enabling people to do good work. And the more you can automate, the better. How do you know a patient was infected? Yeah, okay, yeah. So I said let's keep that out of the scope right now. Let's explore this together when we go into the, hey, how could this be affected by the pandemic at the moment? So we hadn't planned that yet. Did I miss any question? Okay, so we have another need here. Shift planner, quick feedback on the plan execution. That's true. The shift planners need to know immediately, like this is the emergency cover. Is everything working like we planned it? And also getting feedback to maybe change things in the future. And the salary department, they need lazier feedback. They need to know, hey, does this work? Are they doing a good job? If not, let's talk. But this doesn't have to be so closely tied.
So going back to the salary department there, could you explain that just one more time, please?
Yeah, so shift planners are planning and they're optimizing for the coverage of the patients, right? And
Yeah.
for the health of the ambulance drivers as well, for the workload. And the ambulance drivers are optimizing for their own time or whatever other needs they have. And then you have the collected time and the planned time. And depending on if I'm working over hours or under hours, there are certain rules that modify my salary. So if I work more
Okay.
hours than I was initially planned to, I get more money than just the usual hours. I get 25% extra or something like that. So salary department has a very strong interest in keeping those numbers low. So they will have a feedback loop with the shift planners and tell them, hey, stop over planning this person. And maybe sometimes there's a reason that you just can't get around, but sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I didn't know that. Sure, let's do that. But then they figured out that there's a lot of fraud in ambulance work when people go outside, don't work in the building, but work at the patient's home. They start in the morning in the hotel, stamp their time, then go to work, do the work, come back home, eat something, and then clock in the over hours and generate some money for themselves. And this is where the salary department has a huge interest in knowing the location of where someone actually stamped, so they can have a chat and say, look, this is not the address that you were supposed to be at. This is your home address or a hotel.
Okay, so I've put here minimizing unplanned overtime costs. Are you happy with this, Mr. Domain Expert?
I am. I got a
Happy
nice
to.
comment there in the chat. It says overwork reporting. That seems to
Yeah.
be the domain expression in English. Great.
So that's a good question. So I phrased this from the need. Is overwork reporting, is that possibly the capability that supports this need? So maybe we can move this down to the next section now.
Yeah.
Try that. We're getting a bit messy.
Did the noise cancellation work, by the way?
Yeah, I hear a little bit, but all the components. So these are going to be yellow. So I think the overwork reporting, I think if I'm pronouncing your name right, Jerome, I think we're talking about different things here. So I phrased mine in terms of what's the need I have as the salary department. That the actual need is to reduce these costs, and the capability that enables them to do that is overwork reporting. So if we have the capability to produce overwork reports, the salary department can review these reports to assess why we're paying extra money on overtime. How does that fit with everyone else? Anyone like to challenge this, or can we keep it? Okay, so I'm going to open it up. I'm going to open it up to everyone else now. What other capabilities might we need here for any of the users? If you can explain which user, which need, and which capability is needed for that.
We are missing one need in the salary department, and that's fraud detection.
That's a good comment, by the way. I should have copied those. You can use Alt drag to copy things. Sorry, Marco, I cut you off there.
Yeah, I said we're missing one need. It's fraud detection. Salary department wants to detect when someone stamped in their time at an illegal place and therefore generated more time and money for themselves.
Okay, detecting what kind of fraud is this? Detecting
It's basically you're saying that you're working already, but you're not, or you're saying you're still working, but you're not. And this is determined by you are collecting your time from being in the cinema in the evening instead of being at the patient where you were supposed to end your shift.
Detecting fraud in claimed working hours. Okay.
Your English is marvelous.
It's the first time I've been told that, so thank you. So let's open up these capabilities now, and what can we see here? So we will unmute everyone, and if people want to speak out at this point and just shout out things, let's see what happens. I think we can manage it. So Kenny's going to unmute everyone.
Kenny is going to unmute everyone. Everyone is unmuted now.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, everyone should be unmuted. So you can mute yourself again or anything, but speak up if you have any, if you want to participate.
Who can see some capabilities here or components which fulfill these needs?
So for proving hours worked, I think was one of the ideas that this depends on getting the location data.
GPS location tracking, shall we call that? Is that okay?
Yep. Yes.
Does that work?
I would say shared calendars of sorts.
Shared calendars, and that would be for the shift planner, would that be?
Yeah.
So these capabilities and these needs can link to multiple, so anything in a layer can link to multiple elements in the layer above. So the calendar could be used by both these users and these users. So we can go like this and like this also.
Yeah. Could you copy the newest need and bring it down?
The GPS location tracking could also be used for finding emergency cover, or is it visualization, and is that a different component?
Yeah, I think that's what Marco said, right? You said we use GPS to work out who's closest to this patient.
But actually, he's right. This is a second component. The one is you track the location, but then you also want to visualize to find the closest person.
Okay, so we have find closest worker is the top level components. So we go like this, and then this one depends on the GPS.
Yes.
Something like, I'm going to drag this down.
Not only shared calendars, but field calendars or completed calendars. I mean, it doesn't help if it's not up to date.
True.
It means something to fill the calendars automatically.
We need some kind of alerting as well. Yeah, from Costas. Christina, sorry, how could I describe yours as a component?
The shared calendars is only one part, because if the calendars have to be kept up to date. If I am sick, or I can work, or I cannot work. I don't know how to.
Yeah. So we need to be able to put new information into the calendars. So of course we don't want to have a shared calendar that everybody can just edit. It's there's a shift plan, and the shift planners have the authority over that. But once I tell them, hey, I'm sick, they need to update it, and it needs to get distributed to everyone, maybe even with a notification, so people get a ping that they need to do something now.
And this is also the feedback on the plan execution
system. Is it more like an individual, like an ambulance driver calendar that he can have authority to update, and then it makes visible to the shift planner so he can update his?
It's a little different. So in the actual implementation, there is a plan, and you can request a change. And this is not a new plan, but you just request a detailed change. You say, I don't want to work tomorrow, or I want to have this shift next week. You can just enter detailed information into the request. That request as an atomic thing goes to the shift planner, and they can say, yeah, we allow it or disallow it, or maybe we modify it and then allow it. And then it becomes part of the shift plan.
Yeah,
It's
good question.
Also, Nick,
After
it's
you.
also bound to feedback and plan execution, I think. Don't you think?
Sorry?
The shift update notifications are not bound to feedback and plan execution too.
True.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this for now. There was a question in the chat I was just noticing, which was, is shared calendar the shift plan? Are these two separate things, or are we having multiple ways of describing the same thing?
Ooh, this is where contexts come in. So the word calendar has multiple meanings here. There is, let's say, the plan. The shift plan is a tool that is to actually make sure that everything works out well. Once it is committed, you have another plan. That plan is a thing we show publicly. So let's call it the public plan, or the shared calendar in this case. We would call it the public shift plan. And that one is the one that the workers can see, oh, what do I have to do next week? They do not see the thing in the ideation phase or in the still development phase, but they see it after it has been committed. Of course, after it has been committed, there can still be changes by revoking some decisions, even after the fact, or just because of emergencies or people saying, hey, I ask for a request, I want to have a holiday tomorrow, a vacation day. So there's always short-term things, but it will always be edited into the planned calendar and then updated into the published calendar.
So there's a draft calendar and there's a published calendar,
right,
so to speak.
Yes. Is it useful to show both of these things on this map, do we feel, or can they be represented by single components?
I don't know.
It sounds like drafting versus planned might be, you might want to have different expertise in both of those things. Like creating a plan might be a specialist activity.
They obviously have different users, so
yeah, that's a good heuristic. So separate them.
So we'll have one which is called draft calendar. Yeah, is that okay? And the other one was
published calendar.
Published calendar.
Okay, question about the GPS location tracking. This is an operation or some sort of functionality that you know where the driver or healthcare worker is, but we would like also to inform him that he's actually within the boundaries of the location that is a valid like a work location, so like a patient or some sort of facility, so that you basically you kind of I hate actually to use this particular term, but I'm working in a very similar space, but in the tracking industry. You can build out sort of a geofence around the location that is a valid one. For example, where the patient lives, address, some sort.
Thank you. Cool. I'm going to note that down. That's great. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, so we haven't thought of that. But a geofence is a fancy term. I like that.
It's actually widely used in the, pretty widely used in the tracking industry, specifically like container delivery in the marine sea terminals.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite common in IoT domains as well, where you're monitoring vehicles. I worked for a company who were building smart boat applications to track boats. And the use case they had is people have these very expensive yachts worth millions of pounds. And when they go walking on land, they're worried that their boat might get stolen. So they put a geofence around their boat. And if their boat moves outside of the geofence, they get a notification that something's happened.
Yeah, that's what I'm going after, is that for the ambulance driver and healthcare worker, it will be great for them to know, am I in the right place? Can I track it? So that, for example, they might as well be doing or clicking, let's say I started my work just basically by the nature that they don't know that they are in the right place. So it's better to tell them, guys, you're in the right place. You can start the clock ticking. So I don't know how you can formulate this functionality, but it's not exactly the GPS tracking. It's more of a informing the driver or the healthcare worker that you are in the right place. You can actually start tracking your hours, and that actually would minimize the fraud.
Really good idea. I would call that assisted tracking or something like that. Yeah, tracking assistance to make sure that location is valid. I'm really good at names in English, right?
Well, assume good intentions, right?
Yeah.
I'll put this on here for now. It's about helping the employee. It's more about helping them to decide when they can start work, right?
Yes.
I'll hang it off this one for now.
Yeah.
So
there's one more comment, and 4 people agree right now. The published calendar is probably more visible than the draft calendar, and I would agree as well. Okay. The draft calendar is visible for the shift planners, but the published calendar is visible for everybody.
Okay, I think we could talk about this for longer, but for the purposes of tonight's activity, I propose we move on to the final part of this and start evaluating these components.
So before we move on and go to the domain, there was a question on YouTube where someone said, while you do the value chain, and it was discussed on the Miro example, right? Where you say, do you need 2 layers of needs there? And actually, Higher Thought answered there, you always get more detailed. I usually encourage people to go shallow, overly simple at the first phase. Get through the whole process with a too simple map. Then you see which areas are interested to you, then go deeper. So there was just a thing that was going on the YouTube chat as an explanation about this value chaining. So thank you for that explanation.
That's quite a useful heuristic when modeling any kind of modeling technique. Sometimes you can get lost in the details of one activity, but often it's beneficial to go all the way through the process and then work in iterations.
And also, I think it's important to to emphasize that value chain is not necessarily a value stream, because value stream has a time component. Value chain means it's more actual talking irrespective to the time itself.
Good point.
Yeah.
And your heuristic, Nick, reminded me of the same I use for event storming, right? Always finish the story first before you dive into all these different use cases, because it can get far too complex. You can always add more detail later, especially remotely. That's actually the good part about remote, right? It's easier to just move the stickies to the right. You can group them and move them to the right and add in more stickies.
I've got a quick story for you relating to this heuristic. So I did a DDD training at the start of this year, and I wanted to show the benefits of going wide versus going deep. So I had 2 groups. They both had an event storm for the same domain. And I gave them 30 minutes, and I said to one group, you have to go as slow as you want to. You can have whatever conversations you want to until you move on. I said to the other group, you have to get from one end of the event storm all the way to the other in 30 minutes. At the end of the exercise, the first group said, we felt very calm and relaxed, no stress, but we didn't get very far. The second group said, we almost started having a fight with each other because we had to shut down every conversation. But the thing is, the second group, because they went wider in their event storm, they uncovered more areas that they could zoom into later. So I'm not saying you should impose extreme time constraints, but the benefit of going wide when you're modeling is that your model is like a map, and the more you explore, the more you realize where you want to zoom in and focus later.
I have one question. Isn't it a problem that we are moving already to part 6, but the main, the detect fraud, we didn't say anything about fraud, and this is one of the main purposes.
We could do that, but for the purposes of this activity, I'm going to move things on so we can complete this within the first hour, and then you all can model something in the second hour. But
okay, but in a normal session, you would focus on the main part or on each of need?
Yeah, I think for the first iteration, we would probably go over each need and find at least one component for that need. I think so, but I'm not an expert here. Also, Eric Evans in the audience is saying he agrees we should go wide, but we should also go deep in places to make things concrete. I also agree with this. I think it's very important. So I also use a technique called example mapping, where you take some business criteria and you find examples of the criteria. So let's say a user cannot make a purchase if they have less than £5 in their account. That's a business rule.
Wat?
We then find.
Ja.
Ga je fietsen?
Als de weer.
Someone's on the
I
street.
made him silent.
Okay, continue.
That's the fun of remote, right? That's all part of the experience. That was fantastic. That was like that was awesome.
Your pizza.
So yeah, the example of example mapping is before discussing the whole domain, it's great to have one concrete example, because if people don't have a foundational idea of what the rules and concepts are here, it's very difficult to understand what you're talking about as you're moving through the map. So yeah, definitely going wide versus going deep. That's the skill of facilitation, right? You've got to try and help a group to go only as deep as they need to go, while still trying to go wide and uncover the whole map. Thank you for that one, Eric.
Yeah. So I've written these two heuristics that actually compete with each other down. And I'm gonna think.
I would probably give you another heuristic that you might actually always look at the purpose, which is the basically part one of the canvas, and see if the scope of what you have at the stage 5 value chain sufficiently meets the purpose of your system. Because you might actually accidentally not only went wide but also deep, but you still did not capture the purpose of why. Yeah.
Yes, I would totally agree with that.
Good point. Thank you.
I want to stop the heuristics now, because I also have some and I want to get them out. But this is not about heuristics. Let's continue with step number 6.
Point. All right.
And thank you very much for all the heuristics.
We have these 4 elements on the x-axis of a Wardley map, these 4 phases every component goes through. Commodity is something that has low differentiation. You can buy it off the shelf. You can get pay as you use sometimes. Whereas Genesis it's a new concept. It hasn't been fully explored yet. It's kind of an unknown. It could be something big in the future, but it could also have no potential. Would anyone else like to try and explain these 4 phases from their perspective or with an example? Marco, maybe you could give us the first example of one component and where it lives on here. So maybe published calendar. Where would you put this one?
So, I can't move the mouse. Okay, great. So I would put published calendar into custom, because a published calendar is a thing that we have been working on for 15 years now. It is not Genesis anymore, but we build it ourselves and we do not buy anything. It is a product that we sell, but we produce it and change it all the time. Therefore, I would put it into custom.
Is it possible that you could buy this as a product? So you could replace your internal version and buy something off the shelf that supports this need?
Not now. Right now, This is still core domain. So this is a reason why we exist. We can't buy this off the shelf because we provide very special service for calculations that no other competing product has. But in the future, sure, in the next 5 to 10 years, this might be something you can actually get off the shelf if the companies that produce the competing software get better and it becomes more of a product market.
As a gut instinct feel, how further left and right do you think this is? Is it closer to the right?
It's right in the middle. A lot of those parts are kind of, you could split it into multiple components, and then some of them would be products and some are very much custom. None of this is really Genesis. It's all just basically rules, and whenever the law changes, you have to change the system, understand it well. So as long as you have good domain experts and quick developers, this is a custom build, but yeah, put it right in the middle.
Okay, and I think you touched on something else there. When we do mapping sessions like this, we are deciding which level of abstraction to use based on kind of a gut feel, right? Like we could break up the calendar into multiple things, or we could keep it at this level.
Yeah.
So I think that's just kind of something you get used to, right? You get a feel for what level we should be discussing, perhaps.
Yeah. Also, if you don't have the feeling, that's a good heuristic from me again. Making multiple maps to see what feels better is something that I do to get more clarity.
Cool. Make multiple maps. So, quick question from Costas. Aren't these needs covered by existing workforce management products?
Yes, we are one of them. We are one of the workforce management products in a specific field of healthcare workers in Germany under specific laws, where you have, in German, it's called TVÖD, AVR, and BAT-Tarif. You're welcome. So that's like 90 books of law work.
Can you put that on a sticky, Nick, please?
I'll send you the description later. But yeah, so we are one of those products in this case.
Actually, I'm working with an Austrian company at the moment, and a lot of the code is in German, so I'm pretty comfortable with 50 character long words. It's part of my brain's thinking now. There is one point I'd like to make here. You touched on that, Marco. So what's custom for us here is actually a product or a commodity for your customers, right?
Sure.
So for them, on their Wardley map, this calendar would be a product they buy off their shelf in their business, in their domain.
Totally.
This isn't something that's custom to their company. It's something they buy.
Yeah.
So I'd like someone from the audience now to tell me, where does the draft calendar live and why?
On the same place.
The custom
published calendar.
Okay, and why is draft calendar the same as published calendar?
Because it doesn't have any meaning without the published calendar. I cannot.
Yeah, I made a mistake here. I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
I explained the draft calendar, not the published calendar. It was my mistake. So the draft calendar belongs into the middle of custom. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is what I meant. Exactly because the two of them have to be together. What I'm doing with the product, I bought draft calendar, which I have to implement in my published calendar.
But it's possible that if this is this could just be a simple UI, a calendar where you can publish data to a calendar, any kind of data that could live here. And this contains your custom logic. So how is it in your company, in this company, where does the published calendar live? Is it something you build or buy?
So it's something we built. It's draft calendar, but we already know that it's a strategical disaster and we want to have it more as a web export and maybe even just as a Google Calendar or whatever format you want. So it would be product rental. That would be really great because publishing information and then optimizing the UI is work we don't want to do. That's something as a product. Right now, it's custom built, and that sucks a lot because we have to put a lot of effort in making a good UI, and that's not our strong suit.
What stops you from using Google Calendar and just publishing events to Google Calendar, some simple bit of code that takes the draft bunch of API calls to Google Calendar?
There's 3 different aspects, I think. The one is legal issues. Publishing information about work data and personal names and locations, maybe even, and patient names and all those things. You can't just put that on Google. It's an American server system. Even if it's an enterprise account, we have no control over the data. So we need some security there, GDPR compliance and stuff like that. The other thing is ease of use. With our own system, we have control, so we know how it looks and feels to the user. With Google Calendar, when they are very much upstream, when they change something, we now have to make sure it still looks like our product. So branding and stuff like that needs to go into that. And the third thing is our customers or the users of our system aren't tech-savvy people. It's not like a bunch of developers, but you have people who are explicitly not tech-savvy. They need simple things. And surprisingly enough, these very well thought out UIs like Google Calendar aren't always intuitive to people who aren't tech-savvy. So it's kind of a risky thing there.
All right. I propose we spend 7 more minutes on this and work until the hour, and we take a quick break before the next section. So find closest worker. Actually, before we do that, how about GPS location tracking? Where does someone in the audience think location tracking lives?
Let's buy it.
Let's buy it. Okay. So it's something we buy. Is it a product or a commodity? Commodity. Why is it a commodity and not a product?
point because it's on every phone.
Yeah,
I would totally agree. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. I'd say one of the key things, if we look at the market over here, in product it's growing, whereas in commodity it's mature. And I think we can agree here. I think we all agree that GPS location tracking is a very mature technology. So down here somewhere, thumbs up, is this okay? Or more to the right, or, all right. So now we've established this is a commodity and why. Let's move to find closest worker, which could be a little more intricate, a little more challenging. So any thoughts on this one? You can either type in chat or you can speak up.
So this is just about combining data, right? But you'll probably have to build something. Maybe you can buy something, but then there's again the legal considerations, probably.
It's probably somewhere borderline between the custom and the product or commodity and the product, because you might actually rent some services that can give you the proximity or some sort of a cluster analysis of where or one point how close it is to others. But you might actually have to do something on the custom side to make this thing working fast.
Yeah, so if we were to zoom in on this find closest worker and break it down, I think there would be things like creating a geofence, as you talked about before. I think that's a very off-the-shelf technology somewhere towards the end of product or commodity.
Yeah.
You've then got, are there any workers inside the geofence? Taking a GPS location and saying, is it inside a geofence? That's quite a basic thing. You can open source tools do that for you. So what might be in here that isn't covered there? What might be the complicated parts of find close?
Some criteria for the worker who needs to be satisfy certain work requirements. For example, he can go to a specific location or the patient if he has X, Y, and Z, something like that.
Specific rules in here about which workers we need to check.
Correct.
Maybe we should phrase it more clearly as find closest available worker.
Yes.
True.
It
gets tricky because
available,
the word
suitable
available
worker.
Yes.
At least it links to the fact that you have to check the underlying system of schedules and whatnot.
Yeah. And now it gets really complicated, and this Genesis, not only in custom.
Whoa, you're going over here.
There is a lot of unexplored territory here. We do not know how all this relates to GDPR. So another system, is it okay if we use a UUID as a reference over and over again, or do we give away too much information? So we need to experiment, to ask a lot of people to really see how this product can evolve. And both need different information. Availability is a lot of location and time, and how much of this can we actually put into other systems. But suitable, that's the part we haven't really figured out yet. It's like the same degree. Do you have the same ability? How do you actually track abilities? By now, it's a lot of manual work. The shift planners know their workers, and they know I need that person. We're not tracking every little in the software, but just a general gist of it. So availability and suitability aren't really easy to define right now. There is still more domain exploration to be done. So I would.
But these are all draft calendar.
Yes, that's right. Oh yeah, right.
Do we pull that in Genesis as well?
No, because the draft calendar is already built. So we might be able to. Cool. Haven't thought about that. Thank you. This is very delighting.
So if we were to say this is Genesis and it's an unexplored, undefined space, one of the hired thoughts, I think he's watching on YouTube, he's put the focus of value is high future worth. Do you think that applies to this? Could this be a feature which has like a big impact? The capabilities it provides.
Well, let's say in cooperation with the fraud detection, yes. So the whole let's hone in on make some money from that. That has a lot of capabilities. Finding the closest available worker, it only takes a little workload of a shift planner. So it has a high emotional value for the people working in the company. Might affect something, but there is not real high. So define worth. Do you mean financial worth or do you mean value of any kind?
I think worth here, and Ben's watching, so he into. I think worth is how much of the next layer above can it provide value to? So
yes,
we've said
then there's high future worth, definitely.
We're saying here that supports the need of finding emergency cover. How much drastically improve the way we find emergency cover? So I was saying basically this component is linked to this need here, finding emergency cover.
Yes.
So the worth of this component is how well is there potential that the way we find the closest available suitable worker could radically improve how we find emergency cover in terms of we can find better.
Yes. There's two different things. There is a short-term improvement because right now you have to call everybody, or you have to look in the plan where there might be and then figure out who you can call. So there's a lot of manual work and a lot of and just click a button and the software will tell you these 5 people, call them, try them. That would save a lot of time and hassle. And it will also take the blame of the shift workers. Why did you call me? No, the system said you're the closest one and you're available. Great. So that will increase emotional security in the system and all those things. So, and the second thing is potential future use. We get into a more and more remote working world, even for the hospital workers. Why would they come into the hospital all the time when they can do everything from home, take their own car, put the stuff in, drive to the patients, and only regather material once a week or so? Then you get more and more into in different realms. But for that, you need a good ability to find the patient and the closest worker. So this opens up a new market, probably.
Cool.
So
I see a lot of potential in here.
And Ben said wealth generation. That's his answer in the YouTube chat.
Well, that.
Yeah, and we kind of we focused on the health, the underlying. There's a customer, a patient, and the meeting that patient needs also is ultimately the goal. Is that what adds up the maximum value of what this application is doing, what this company is doing.
True.
So if you miss, for example, you had an emergency and you cannot actually serve that particular customer, that patient, well, and the patient really, there was a life-threatening emergency of sorts or something like that, then you basically, the value could grow exponentially really high.
I have a generic question while doing this exercise. If you're talking about determining value, shouldn't you take into account the priority of importance of the need?
The priority of the importance of the need?
The priority or the importance. For example, if you now talk about this finding closest available suitable worker, we connect that to the finding emergency cover need. Shouldn't you then determine how important that is? How important is finding an emergency cover? How often does that happen? Is that really something that is disturbing?
Yeah.
Should you take that into account or not at this phase?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think, we're always trying to work out with the limited time we have available as a company, what should be our priority? To answer your question directly, I don't know how you would do that with a Wardley mapping, actually. I don't know if there is a way to emphasize the priority between these different needs. So that's something we might be able to experiment with in the hands-on sessions later, some way of capturing this. It's potential we could use color codes, or we could try and add some notation on here, like a gold star or something, I don't know, but I don't know how we would do that, but I think it's useful to do that at some point.
Oh,
I have an idea for that because we have experimented with different kinds of visualizing stuff. So if you add a symbol, just a text with an icon in, on Windows it's Windows button dot, then you can add a whatever icon you want, and you can put the value in the dimension inside of the sticky note. You can put the finance team and the worker team and the patients, giving them different symbols and show where the value for them is. So, visualization of who or which role values this feature in what level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, cool. I think that's one of the advantages of doing things remotely. When you're not limited to the shapes and colors of Post-it notes, you can design your own notation specific to the types of visualization you're creating.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna.
Sorry, remember that also the value axis is value. So you can also sort them like higher the ones that have more value for the user.
Yeah, that's true. We could.
Yeah, something like that.
So it says here
in the YouTube chat, it says, think of prioritization as a practice itself. That came from Ben, higher thought.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question now for the axis. It says value chain, but also visible, invisible. Is it now visibility or value that we have on that axis?
Yeah, so I was about to say the same thing. Understand what's meant by, I get the general idea is the higher up it is here, the more visible it is to the user. So GPS location tracking is some hardware and software in your phone. Yeah, the user probably doesn't see too much of that, or it's probably a bit higher. But yeah, I don't really have an answer for that. I guess I need more practice to understand this concept of visible, invisible.
Okay, but I think we will agree that find closest available suitable worker is really high value. And at the same time, it is something which it has a visible impact. And I see it too. I have a,
yeah.
I move it on the top. I would move it on the top.
Yeah, maybe that's a good heuristic for the y-axis. The more valuable it is to the user, the higher it goes.
Yeah, I like that. That is more important to me than seeing how visible it is.
And visible doesn't necessarily mean that it's like has any UI component per se, but it has more impact on the user itself or ship.
Yeah.
It's a visible impact. It makes a difference.
Yeah, that's a great point, I would say.
Maybe perceivable is then a better.
Yeah, perceivable, perceptible, something along those lines. Okay, so I propose we take a break now for the next 30 minutes. So in my time zone, it's 7 minutes past 7. If we reconvene here at 7:20 UK time, we can then move on to the breakout activity. So chance to take a toilet break, grab a drink, and then we'll introduce the hands-on activity. And we've got some Miro boards prepared for you. So see you in 30 minutes. 13, sorry. 13.
You. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
I'm gonna move you all into breakout rooms now, and you can start doing it yourself.
Yeah, so...
And start working it. So you get invited to the room. So Nick, maybe you can care to explain?
Wait, before we do that, is everyone back here, or should we? I think there's a few cameras that haven't turned on. So I'll just wait 1 minute just to make sure, give everyone a chance. So for everyone who is here, the next activity will be forming teams of 3, and we will go through the same exercise as we did before in the small group. So in your team, pick one person who's an expert in a particular domain, pick the domain they know about, and choose that as your business to model. So that person becomes your domain expert, and it's the responsibility of the other people in your team to ask them questions to fill in the Wardley map canvas. So moving from sections 1 to 6, like we did before, the domain expert answers the questions, and the other 2 members of the team put the cards on the wall.
Yeah.
And how are you informing us who is in which board?
You'll get it now through Zoom.
Okay.
So I'm gonna open all the rooms, and you'll get an invite to the room, right? So you'll be there with 4 people, and team 1 will have 5. So Nick will go there. So I'm gonna open up the rooms now, and here we go. Have fun. So hello, group 1.
Hey.
So you should have your Miro board link in the chat. Is that correct? Is it still open?
Yeah, the link is still available in the chat. If we scroll right down to the bottom,
yeah,
I am able to access the board anonymously.
Good.
So I see it.
I'll move to a different room.
So I guess what we can all do is we can all put a post-it note up here with our name on. So here's me. I'm Nick.
And oh, there is going to be a lot of people in this Miro board. Yeah.
Hello. So the link should still be in the chat. So you're group 9.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. So have fun. Everyone's on board. Great. Then I'll move to the next room and see how it goes there. Hello, group 17. How's it going here? Do you have access?
We need the domain.
Everything works?
Yeah, we found our board, and now we are looking for an expert.
Good. Then I'm just checking up on all teams, see if everyone's up and running. See you later.
We need to just zoom a bit out, or is a navigation pane that we can activate.
It contains 8 times the template that we just viewed. So if you just zoom out and take board for 20.
Oh yeah. Whoa.
So if you take the up left team 25, there's your board.
Yes.
We
right,
can look.
Cool.
So the stream can now actually look at what you're doing and can also look at the other teams. Just not see group 2. Oh, yeah, they're working as well. Yeah. So
great.
Have fun.
Okay.
I thought that you will be our domain expert.
No, I'm going through all the breakout rooms, and hopefully the people on the stream can ask questions to the groups and see how that goes.
Yep.
So who wants to be our domain expert?
How's it going here?
Yeah. So we've all checked into the Miro board. We've added a card on the board to say we're here. And we're just going through the awkward phase of choosing the domain expert right now.
That's the awkward one, yeah.
So I have a generic one we can use, which is online groceries and supermarkets. If no one has anything interesting that they want to share.
I had a thought of a app for social distance waiting in line outside a supermarket. Some places are actually coming up with that now. Quest Diagnostics for blood tests now has wait wherever and use your app on the phone to know when to come into the waiting room.
All right. I propose if no one else wants to offer anything else or discuss alternatives, we should take that.
So what would you say is the thing that we will be mapping? What does it include? Is it like an app, a website?
It's the whole system. It's the app and the website. We are mapping everything to try to find places for, let's say, improvements. Improvements could be optimizations, or improvement could be like new areas to explore, new features to explore, new something. So we are going to map everything, app and website.
Okay. As far as the users go, I've written down new learners and improve, but improve is not something, is not a user. How do we name them?
New learners, if we put it in the scope like new, the other type of users could be like experienced, advanced, or English students.
Yes, pick one.
I'm thinking out loud.
Like experienced?
Yeah, and I love when you ask about the schools is like university students. Of course, not universities that have English as the main language, but other universities where English is a requirement as a second language.
So the main target audience are university students. So there's a
no, it's not the main one. It's just another one.
Okay.
There's a different type of users of the system. And of course, then we have the staff. So we do have teachers.
And how does this thing with the teachers happen? Is it are those teachers and students interacting at the same time, or are they teachers producing some material?
Yes, they have like three types of interactions. I don't know, three types of content. Content from the content department that has been supervised by the teacher but not created by the teacher. Content that the teacher creates but records as a video. So this is probably from a curriculum. He records a video about one specific topic. And then sessions like this one, when they get together with the other students in the same class and they practice something.
Do the teachers also build the material, or do they all use the same thing, or is there somebody else that builds the course material?
The teachers all together build the course materials. Yeah. And then we have like content people that provides English content for practices and for practicing. And the teachers only like supervise that and say, okay, this is okay for this level or not. And this material could be just like short stories, news, or short videos, cartoons, or something like that, that are freely available somehow. And it's in the app for people to have enough material to practice.
Is it content providers or content curators?
It's more curators, yes, very good. These are staff. Teachers and content curators, that's good.
Both staff.
In the box number 1 purpose, there's a question: why does this organization or project exist? So what makes you different from all the other learning platforms?
Oh, good question. The purpose was to, I should remember that. Something like reduce the gap and help improve the world by teaching English. And what makes this particular app different from the others, one is the focus on only English. And the way they are preparing the content is not something like this has a background of an academy and they moved it online. This was not born as an app like Duolingo or some of other that are like short sentences. This has more the feeling of a classroom behind it. So hard to put in a sentence. I can search it online if you want.
Yeah, teach English online with a classroom feeling.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep, that's good.
Okay. I think we have a half an hour left. Do we move on?
Yeah.
So everybody can change the board, I think. So I don't want to.
Okay, I can try to copy these.
Already done.
Already done. Okay.
You can all do it, but faster. Sorry. I made them smaller because in the first session I thought they were very big and it annoyed me a bit. So
yeah.
Is Eric trying to connect and he can't?
Let's not wait for him. He's probably too old to use technology.
Come on.
Well, he was on camera at the start. You're very welcome to join, Eric, but we don't hear you right now. Okay, needs.
User needs. I always struggle with this. If these are needs inside my system or needs like
for example, the call recording was something that, especially after GDPR came into force, was highly regulated, and we had to obey the local adaptation of the legislation. So all the recorded calls had to be routed, had to be encrypted, and we had to enforce some kind of access control on who could listen to recordings and stuff like that. So that was one part. The whole thing is that the way this system was built, it provided the capability to build. It worked like a platform, so you could build a lot of things on top of it. So it was extensible in the sense that you could integrate it. It offered an API that you could integrate with your CRM or ERP or other such applications, because otherwise you couldn't really. It didn't really make much sense. Only if you connect such a system to the rest of your business can you really reap the benefits of such a solution. Like, for example, predictive dialing and automated dialing for marketing campaigns and stuff like that. It makes sense to automate these things. So you had to connect it to some kind of ERP or CRM to do this. This wasn't bundled into the application, into the system. So we would do custom integrations for each CRM or ERP that every customer would have. So yeah, these are some of the things.
Okay, should we move on to the users? Who was this for?
Just a second. We had the same question in Marco's example too. This is obviously not a public application.
Of course, yes.
It's a company application only for internal.
It's on premise, or it is provided via private cloud. So you could either install it on your servers, or you could use it as a service on the company's infrastructure, not your own infrastructure if you're a customer. But depending on the license model you chose, you could also just run it on top of a cloud provider. So it was quite flexible in that sense. But it never really moved to the SaaS, let's say, space.
Yeah. Okay.
And this was one of my main objections and one of the main reasons I left that company.
This wasn't in Germany.
No, it was in Greece.
Yeah. In Germany, wouldn't happen too. Not at the telecom.
Yeah.
Very scared. Cloud
So
is bad.
So it's kind of competitive to solutions like Cisco or Avaya or stuff like that, but with a fraction of the cost and very comparable features. So the purpose wasn't really to build a SaaS offering; it was to capture this market segment that was out of reach for most companies, for most small companies.
Okay.
Okay.
We want to like this, move it there, like that, and then try to find out the needs for all those users.
So we kick out the port authority as it's an auxiliary user. The next exercise may be a bit simpler.
Yeah.
Sure. So there's already the audit trail en route. What is this need? Is it a real need? And do we need to link this need to a specific user?
It's linked both to the truck driver and the truck company, and I would keep them distinct because there are two classes of users. One of them, the employees of the trucking company, and another one is the what they call the owner operator, effectively independent contractors, and they're getting paid the same, but right. But let me stop here because it will unnecessarily cloud the discussion.
Let's start the time box because we have 22 minutes left. I would like to actually end up in the map itself.
So we can focus on the truck driver needs.
Audit trail on route. Okay. So truck driver getting paid.
Yep.
For the services.
When I was more into logistics, one important thing
getting paid for the overtime, to be specific, to be precise. Yeah.
Someone was trying to say something.
Yeah, hello. One thing that usually is very important when you have a lot of truck drivers is that not all of them arrive at the same time, because then you get a lot of congestions at the loading bay. The receiver of goods should probably want to know if they can make it on schedule or will be delayed and need to reschedule the loading.
Go to other places to find material that is suitable. Yeah. And this is in order to have the fresh content. They go to read news and they filter the news according to the level, and they publish these news from other places.
Okay.
Do we go to the value chain?
Yep.
I'm trying.
To drag copy, if that helps.
All right, last time you copied the needs and arrows too, so I'll do that.
Right, I'll delete those things down here. Move them out of the way.
So
are we still on YouTube?
You see, I think when Kenny is there, we're on YouTube.
Okay.
No,
it's
please.
a problem. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah. All right, cool.
We are doing good work.
Yeah, we're tackling the value chain. There's not a lot of time. I think this was planned until 9.
Yeah.
So let's.
Okay. Hello, Patrick. Hello, Christian.
Hello. Welcome. Guys. We're in group 9. So if you open the Miro, we're now tackling the value chain. You'll have to zoom in because we're making our post-its very small on Miro.
And if I understood correctly, maybe this curriculum is more like something that supports having a clear learning path and having the certificate. So let's mark it like that.
Say bye to YouTube.
Christian, Patrick, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I am here.
Cool. Do you see the Miro board?
Visible component with power and actual compute servers, which is right where technology people would start. So I think this mapping really is there to go from actual business, visible business value, and link it in a somewhat orderly manner towards the invisible things that we actually work on. And probably it helps to give a lot of justification. So it's nice that you start from the need and then you go to the implementation. It is simple. Why are we doing this at the level of a team or a department? Well, it's to satisfy this very user visible need. I think that's kind of the gist of the mapping itself.
Quiet.
Yeah, we decided to try and get through the 6 steps in one iteration quickly. So we're skipping like some of the details for now, and then we'll circle back to those later. Sounds good. I've got a question for you, David, regarding the not getting the virus. So in your vision for this product, do you see a world where some people have been given a passport, like you're immune to the virus, And would this tool
Who would be interested in that? Is that payroll?
That will be payroll. I would rename probably the, instead of payroll, maybe use accounting, but for the purpose of this exercise, I think payroll is good.
It's simple.
Yeah. Now it's going quite cool actually. So we will go to the value chain now. Step 5.
Okay.
I don't know if how much do we have time, Kenny? Okay, so we need to stop at 9, and then okay. Okay, great.
Yeah, so we need to put this yellow stickies. So we need to copy the user needs and then start putting the yellow stickies for the
or Cisco or Avaya.
Okay, let's say we
systems.
just need compute power.
Yeah, but it's not just compute. I mean, you have different options. Like you could either use telephony service as a VoIP service from a provider, and then that you don't need any special hardware or that, or you might need, depending on the setup, you might need the specialized hardware cards and servers to handle the calls. So it depends on
So if we don't buy that,
But let's try both of them. Like both services.
Yes.
I mean, in the end, it's one service we need. Either we have to implement our own, or we buy it. So we could.
But as I understand, you can do both. You can buy
Yes.
voice over IP service. This is one thing, and you can have it on premise. That means another part.
I just would visualize this in this mapping part in the end, where we can then move this telephony company service to, okay, we need to build it our own to make it custom, or we could move it to product or to commodity.
Different
but it
parts,
remains the same service.
Okay. I don't think I agree. I mean, you could either do it on premise with your own servers, especially if you have an agreement with the telephone service provider and they get you a copper line like a T1 or an E1 or something like that, a PRI line as we call them, to handle multiple calls, or you would get a VoIP service, in which case you don't need any specialized hardware. So
okay, so we have those are two things. We have the telephony service as is. We get some copper line, some way to make calls, and then we have the real service infrastructure. And that's something where we could decide to do it our own or just buy it. Telephony infrastructure.
Feeling. We as a group start this course, and in 3 months we will all graduate.
Group of students, and I would add something like forum.
So I'm wondering, how's it going with 2 new people in the room? For you.
Still on the value chain.
Yeah, let's add one. Let's add the forum and move to the.
Yeah, we have 10 minutes to go before we move back.
So the forum is separate.
I would say forum as something separate. Yes.
Yeah.
Could you name it closed forum? Because we explicitly said it was
awesome.
for our group.
Yeah. It's this for this group.
Something like a class space?
Sorry?
Something like a class space? Something like forum class space when you can share your knowledge there?
I think that's what we mean with the forum, yes.
Okay, that is great. And probably the priority, we have all the dependencies, we have all the different components, but then the list, let's say the sort in the value axis is probably not super
let's do that.
fine-tuned.
Let's do that on the final map.
Yeah, that's very good.
Okay, I can copy it over.
Thank you.
Okay.
Visitors, and we haven't any means here to do it otherwise. But I would agree that it's somehow here in the product.
So I think you raise a good point there. I think you raise a good point here, which is there are two ways of looking at this. There is the view from inside our company, how do we classify this? And there is the perspective of the overall market. So I think you can buy these tools off the shelf, but you could still custom build it yourself.
So that would be a question to David. How well enhanced are we in store visitor tracking? We have to build it from new.
I think in order to roll it out quickly, it needs to be pretty much the 2 doormen are just reporting how many go in and how many go out. But this did spark the notion with the shopping cart mention that if you had smart shopping carts with a little display on them, then that solves a lot of problems real fast. Like, are people too close? Well, if they just stay near their shopping cart, then get a little, you know.
So that's interesting. So for the physical distancing, you use distance between shopping carts. And then on the shopping cart itself, you would have a sensor which says you've gone too far away from your shopping carts.
I didn't think about that last part. I was just thinking you could fairly easily track shopping cart distances throughout the store and then automate pretty much everything off of that.
I'm going to be thinking about this all night tonight now.
Well, Amazon was thinking of having smart carts, which is showing you what you'll owe when you go out the store, and then you don't go to a checkout stand at all.
Absolutely.
You just go out the store.
Yeah.
Just to add another little feature on the shopping cart with a little red arrows saying don't go that way.
And that's a game changer right there, because if you don't have checkouts, you remove those physical interaction points. That is just...
Yeah. I understand they have that going in one store near their headquarters.
I think they have that in New York too.
Maybe we should make an extra distinction to help things going along, because we have the idea, get store capacity, which means in fact be a custom workflow, because we cannot just outsource to a company the entire workflow is getting a store capacity. And that may be custom, but that also depends on whatever our technical decision or our business, our implementation decision of either using shopping carts and whatnot. Maybe we should just add a post-it for that, and then it makes it clear that what the positions of things should be. And we can say all of these ideas are more or less in the custom range, but they use whatever David decides is the best idea he wants to adopt right now. And that is going to be a product or a commodity. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so for getting the actual number of store visitors, what would you like the most?
I think we were saying product there, weren't we?
The low-tech solution.
Yeah.
Which I think ends up being custom because each doorman is entering counts as they go by.
Yeah.
Unless you can.
Sorry.
Unless you can integrate with a sensor at the door that's counting number of interruptions of a light beam or something.
So I've got a quick observation to make here. I would say normally we associate anything that's custom built has to be a complex solution because we're building it ourselves. But in this case, it could be very low tech, like people keeping a tally.
So the CRM, I'd say, is a product or rental, but then we would have a custom integration layer between the call center and the CRM.
So it's between product and custom, somewhere here.
I'd say I'd put the CRM in product, but then I would also add another node, another component, which would be the CRM integration, because it's usually the thing that we needed to build for each customer. We need to custom build for each customer.
So it just copies this and say CRM integration, and then I make a link.
Yes.
Okay, telephone infrastructure. I think we can get this. There are only 6 components.
Okay, so we have reporting. Is that something I can buy, or do I have to?
No, it was all custom provided.
There are different versions, and some of them are in Genesis, some of them in dispatch algorithms. So the matching algorithms, some of them are in custom, some of them are in Genesis, but let's keep it in custom. And historic traffic information. Right now it's custom, but because we're not doing any fancy, any kind of even statistics analysis, it's pretty rudimentary. So it's done as custom, but I think that it would be much more beneficial if we use the product to do more of a machine learning analysis on this. So I'll put it borderline between the custom and the product rental.
And what about the visibility axis? I quite understand the evolution one, but the visible one is quite hard. What's the purpose of this axis, and how to organize our yellow sticky notes?
That axis always confuses me.
I'm not the only one.
No, definitely not.
So, do someone have already an explanation for that, or some more information about how to?
What axis was the confusion here?
The y-axis. What is it about? Is it value for the customer, value for the company? Is it really about being actually visible? Because there's two things on the y-axis. It's value and visibility.
Yeah. So it's value for the customer, and it's actually what I know, but I'm not an expert here. Sorry. How I perceive it, it's how visible something is for the customer is higher.
But for example, what really confuses me is, for example, the GPS location of the truck. This whole system depends on the GPS location being accurate. If that's not accurate, then this whole system breaks apart. So the value is enormous. However, the visibility is extremely low. It's somewhere in the software, in the hardware. It's
hidden.
So is there something in between then? So the truck company was an audit trail en route. So you have the truck company that is the customer here. They want audit trail en route. Do they get GPS location of the truck immediately, or is there something in between? So because then it's pretty visible for them, right? Or else there needs to be something in between, I guess.
It needs to be accurate, but it doesn't necessarily to be a real time. Well, in a sense that it's not like the seconds. The delay here could be in minutes, but not hours.
It's 1 minute, so I'm gonna switch rooms again. And I'm gonna put everyone back into the room soon, just so you know. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
approximate scheduling.
So
and we can actually have an arrow going left.
It's unfortunately it's 9, so I'm gonna close all the rooms and move everyone back. Okay, Nick?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Here we go. So now let's wait for the rest to come. So I don't actually think you see anything here for me. So maybe you can share the boards, Nick.
I saw your screen there. I saw you had
yeah, but I
Team
don't
1's
see it
board.
on the stream, unfortunately.
I did.
So if anyone, let's give everyone the rights. Well, here everyone's moving back. Great. So, shall we go through the boards one by one? Is that something we can do?
Sounds good to me.
Could you share your screen then first, Nick?
Sure.
And any of the group can explain that part.
Yeah. I'll just get the focus right on the map. So I'm going to hand over to David, who was our domain expert. He threw a really, a really relevant domain, an unexplored area. So I'll hand over to you, David.
Yeah, so we'll take about 3 minutes and then we move on to the next team. Is that okay?
Okay. I'm going to move quickly, so ask questions if I go too fast. So I noticed at various shops like Costco and big supermarkets that people were getting in line and they were putting shopping carts between each other. But if somebody didn't have a shopping cart, they might get too close to the person in front, and the person in front can't move away. So they can't maintain physical distancing if the other people aren't cooperating. If you just get rid of the line entirely and have people wait in their cars or wait at home and then come to the store when there's only 10 people waiting to get into the store, then you're not overfilling the available waiting space that has tape on the ground saying, stay this far apart. So that's kind of the purpose and scope. I imagined, well, we came up with counting the people going in and counting the people going out. So you have an estimate for how many people are in the store. The store manager would be keeping track of whether you're getting clusters of people because the store has just too many people in it. He can dial back the number of people allowed in the store. The store visitor doesn't want to get the virus, wants a simple experience. The doormen are keeping are gating people coming in and counting people coming out. And then on the value chain, number 5, managing the capacity. Somebody came up with the idea of using cameras to detect when the store is getting crowded. The one need of the store visitors, clear instructions. And for the simple experience, that's going to depend on appointment scheduling. We figured that the appointment scheduling could initially be off the shelf. And then as we get clarity on the needs, we could end up customizing that, actually moving it to the left as time goes on. And then a lot of the other things are available for integration fairly quickly. one thought came up was if there were intelligent shopping carts, then you take the smart device out of the hands of the store visitor, and the shopping cart, if the visitor stays near the shopping carts with a smart device can keep track of how far they are from each other, and maybe beep if two of them getting too close together.
Cool. Thank you. So how was it, this experience for this group?
I had informally, in my mind, tried to think about this over a 3-week period and just got overwhelmed because I didn't have a means of writing it down and gathering my thoughts. And then, you know, when I first had the idea, I posted on a LinkedIn stream, and the person whose it was said, "Oh, that's a good idea," and then nothing came of it. I've since seen that Quest Diagnostics is now doing this to manage their waiting room. So there are one-off solutions out there showing up.
Cool. Thanks.
I've got one observation to share about this board. So everything's relevant to your company, right? So appointment scheduling, for example. So we have like GP surgeries right now where you can book an appointment at your local GP, a doctor. So you could take that off the shelf as a commodity. But if there are rules specific to your domain, it could be custom built. So as David mentioned, things can actually move left. We often say things are moving right on the Wardley map, as in it becomes more evolved. But in your specific company, you might take something off the shelf to begin with a commodity, and you might build something custom later. And that's something I've not really noticed in Wardley Maps before.
But Nick, isn't that only triggered if a need changes?
It could be triggered by a need change, or I think in our example is we need to get something out there quickly as soon as possible. So we build something using off-the-shelf components and we customize them later. We use that as a base product and we customize it later when we have more time.
Is that the same where you say in DDD itself, right? Where you say sometimes something is supportive but can become core at some point, so it can move to the left on a Wardley map? I
think in this case, we're saying it's something generic. We're taking something generic.
Yeah, even generic in this case. So.
And it becomes supporting your core domains later.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So can you move to the second board, Nick, while you keep sharing? And can someone from group 9, so that's the second group, explain what you did?
Come on, guys, don't make me talk. I already talk a lot.
Come on, Alejandro, you were the domain. You own the domain.
Come on, Jerome. I want to learn. What did you understand about it?
Okay, let's go. So we did our exercise around an app and a website that teaches you English, but with a real classroom feeling. It was one of the participants that had some experience with it in the past. It's an app and a website that we're talking about, and we identified some users and user needs. The thing I liked about the previous one was you took a little sample of your users and their needs to work on the value chain. We took all of them with us, which made the exercise a little bit bigger. And this is what we ended up with. Basically, the curriculum is something that we get from the government or from some instance that we just have to abide by to get our people certified. The users that are most interested in this are our university students. We identified the learning history within our student file as something that we could innovate on. So right now it is custom built, but maybe by adding some AI, we could pull it into the Genesis again and see how we could modify the content by scraping the history of the errors or just things that our students learned. and there was a possibility, because we want to offer a classroom experience, maybe adding virtual reality would be a nice touch.
Now Marco just left. You would go berserk on the VR.
I don't know, maybe some of the others, if I forgot something important, or if there's any comments or something.
So why did you choose virtual classroom as a custom? That I don't have much experience with virtual classrooms. That seems like more to the left to me. Why would you place it almost as a product?
Something I think that in their reality, because our domain expert used to work in this domain, and he described this as something that was more custom than Genesis and more related to a product. But maybe Alejandro, you can explain.
Yeah, actually, there are products that can sell to you these kind of environments, and it's custom built because when it was built, we thought it has some value, but now you have some opportunities to buy this if you want.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so it's been solved by other companies before.
Yep.
And it's in that space where you could buy something or you could build it yourself. It's hasn't fully crossed over yet.
And also when you do these kind of exercises, you can see that these may be a module that you don't want to continue building in-house, because you find that in the market there are options that are not your competitors, because you're adding more value on top of it, that they provide this, that is something that you need.
I guess that's a really big area when you've got something which is on the right-hand side of custom and almost a product. If you're a company, it's like, should we build something here? Because we know it's becoming a product. I guess that's a really difficult conversation to have, a choice to make.
It's an awful conversation. This is actually a
and
real life
right?
experience. Awful
you
conversation, because you have a lot of people that have invested a lot of time building that, and they feel that this is theirs, and they feel that this is the most valuable thing inside the company, even though you are doing the exercise to show that you have all the things that are more valuable. So this is an awful conversation.
Good.
Question. So did you move your the activities according to the value chain up or down? Depending, and if yes, then what was the criteria that you used to evaluate the activity against the value chain dimension?
We tried at the very end, but we have like 15 seconds to go.
Okay.
And we wanted to add like VR and AI, so it's probably not accurate.
I think on the visibility we did do some consideration about that, but mostly in our students, from our students' point of view as a user, and we did also share the remark that we remember that in one of Simon's articles on Wardley Mapping, he says that he doesn't even know himself anymore, or that visibility isn't the right thing to put on the y-axis.
Yeah, we say that because Eric mentioned in the chat that it was about visibility, and I wanted to have a chat with him. Why? And he left.
Yeah, I think he had problems. So maybe if Ben Higher Thought is still on the YouTube stream watching, he can answer that question maybe a bit on the YouTube chat.
No, but Jerome is right. I remember that part on Simon's book.
To be short, it was we did try, but it was a very short time to do this exercise. So we should have probably we should have reduced the scope, and then we could have thought about it more clearly.
Cool.
Thank you.
Let's go to group, what is it, 17? So who was in that group and wants to explain?
So I took on the role of the domain expert because we had a hard time deciding what to map. So I described a part of a system on which I used to work until a few years ago. It's this call center application that's similar to products like Cisco or Avaya or stuff like that. And one of the reasons I left that company back then was that I was sure that someone like Amazon would, grab all the business out of our hands as they did with Connect recently. But anyway, this is something like my understanding of how things should evolve towards more commodity. So this system we were discussing is not something new. It's something that already exists. It's an application for handling calls in a call center for small and medium-sized businesses. It's not a SaaS offering. It's on-premise, or you can use it on your private cloud or your other infrastructure. It sits on a thin line where it's not really, you need more than a couple of phone lines, but you're not really very big company. So it doesn't make sense to use one of the systems offered by the leading companies in the field, in the industry, because it's very expensive. On the other hand, even solutions like Amazon Connect or other cloud telephony services don't provide the cost savings that such a solution provides. So the question here is what of the functionality that's provided by this system can move to a more evolved state. So it's a special, let's say, it's an example of a system that is viewed by everyone as a product or even as a commodity, because after all, it's just telephony. But for the company that's building it, it's something very custom, very in the Genesis phase even so. So the basic users are IT administrators that need to somehow allow the users to be able to handle phone calls. And then we have the agents that will be performing all the calls, and we have the supervisors that will be helping the agents perform better by leveling their work and managing things like work schedules and call scripts and monitoring and reporting in order to report to management. So the system at the moment has a lot of custom components, like even reporting or integrations with CRMs to support each company are custom built. But these are things that are kind of the same. I mean, most companies have the same needs. Even reporting, even access control management are things that shouldn't be done on a custom level. So we were discussing how these things can evolve to more commoditized forms. Actually, at the moment in the industry, there is no standard on what should be reported in terms of how well a call center performs, or how well or even the access control of what its agent can do in such a system. And the thing that was causing the most pain was integrations with all these CRMs, because okay, things that may be easier now with connecting things with Lambda or something like that over APIs, but most companies don't like to expose all their information on the cloud, or they prefer to keep these things on premise. So it's a question how you can somehow standardize these things so that it's not really necessary to come up with custom integrations for each kind of CRM every company might be using. And that's all the time we had.
I have a question about this one.
Sure.
So whenever I use visual modeling techniques like Wardley mapping or event storming, I'm always looking at the shape and the layout of the model, and in particular the white space, because that tells me that gives me a clue about things where something's not happening there. And in this model, I see nothing's happening in Genesis. And so that makes me think, if I'm working for this company, Like, what do we have coming up in the next 5 to 10 years? Like, what's our future here?
Yep, that was my question as well, and that's where I had most of the discussions, and the reason I didn't stay there. So, yeah, but anyway, it's a very regulated industry, and things move at a slow pace because it's to the outside world. This is kind of a commodity. I mean, you just make phone calls, right? But for companies that have to build the systems and maintain the systems, it's really not like that. But I'd say we're still in a product-to-product substitution phase, not really a commodity phase. Even though products like Amazon Connect have recently showed up, they are still lacking basic features and very expensive compared to such systems. So I'm not sure how close we are to industrialization, to commodification.
I would also say CRM is an interesting choice there. So I worked for Salesforce about 5 years ago, and I would consider Salesforce a commodity. It's a cloud service. I don't have to install it, or I can pay on a subscription basis, on a consumption basis. I feel that's more towards the right here. So what I will say is this map is relevant to your company. So it could be that there is a commodity CRM, but you might purchase a product.
Well, this map is mostly geared towards the view of the company that is building the call center application.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
in their view, CRMs are really not commoditized. There are a bunch of options in the market. So you would need to build custom integrations for each one of them so that they can, be used to drive, let's say, outbound marketing campaigns or stuff like that through the call center. So you need some kind of custom work to build on top of whatever API each CRM provides to do this. So that's why it's not really a commodity in their view.
So
that would be fun.
CRM is that thing what Wardley also talks about a lot, right? You will find a lot of CRMs in a lot of companies.
Yes.
Yeah, you can get CRMs on the left,
it's
right?
the biggest dependency generator in most of the companies.
Yes. And the funny thing is, even in the same company, you could have like 2 or 3 or even 5 of them, and you need to integrate with all of them.
Yeah.
For such an application.
Because they're all the single source of content.
Yes.
Doesn't he say like he worked for one company and he found the same thing was duplicated 100 times or 1,000 times?
Something like that. Yeah. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have one question too. I'm very new in Wardley Mapping, but my question is do we mapping something which is or something what it could be?
Well, we had a tough time deciding what to map, so I proposed this, and it was my understanding and my let's say desire was to see things how some of these components should evolve over time towards more commoditized forms. So that's why I put it on the table, and we didn't have the time to discuss all the evolution of all these components, but I put it on the table to discuss these things.
Yeah, so I think you always map the as-is situation first, and then see what your strategy will be. So what will be your next move?
Yeah. So an advanced Wardley mapping technique is you start drawing arrows on here. So I could do an arrow like this saying CRM's moving this way. CRM is moving towards a commodity.
I like the curve. It's most realistic.
Yeah, actually, that is realistic. It's things move in more of a curved format. So you can say things like this. You can say, here's where we are now. We expect that CRM becomes a commodity. Therefore, we should stop adding custom integrations to our CRM provider because we'll be coupled to it and we'll be stuck with a product when a commodity is available later.
Okay.
So before we move on, does that answer your question, Christina?
Yeah, but I don't know, maybe at the end.
Yeah, so let's move to the fourth group, and Ben replied, visibility is a natural outcome of the value chain, as in there there are X components in a chain. Naturally, the layout puts the bottom components less visible than the top component. Simon calls the Y-axis a crutch to help executives feel more comfortable. It looks more like a traditional grep. But his opinion is that if moving something 2 pixels up or down can effectively have meaning to you and others, you should do it. So I hope that clarifies that a bit more. So, can we, group 4? Is there someone from group 4 that's willing to explain?
Mr. Domain Expert.
Okay, I can do that. All right, so let's try to do the time box at 3 minutes. So we documented the domain, the current situation of the application that is currently in production. So it's more of an as-is. And the purpose of the application is to help the trucking. So the domain is delivering of the containers from the marine sea terminals to the warehouses. So there are a couple of, so the purpose of the application itself is to have the audit trail that the trucking company can present to the owner of the goods and get paid for the overtime. So by the nature of the business, the trucking companies are kind of agree with the owners of the goods to deliver the containers with the goods, let's say, in 3 hours. But due to the traffic congestion and some other unintended circumstances, the delivery may be delayed. But because the truck was still was delivering the goods, he wants to get paid for the overtime. So the system that we have right now in production is allows to effectively to get the GPS breadcrumbs or GPS audit trail of the truck, get the information from the truck company ERP system that basically manages the orders to deliver the container from point A to point B, match them together, and then detect when the delivery occurred and what was the expected 3 hours, for example, and what was the actual 4 hours, and then provide the report that is sent out to attached to the invoice to the owner of the goods by the trucking company, and the trucking company get paid for these extra hours. And subsequently, the truck driver who's driving the goods is getting paid as well. So the problem, there are a couple of things that will match up to something that we discussed at the first half of the session of this meeting. So we're still using GPS. We're still using some generic components, and there are custom pieces that in the second column from the left. So the key players: truck company, truck driver, owner of the goods, and accounting. At this point, we were not very successful producing the actions per se, but we captured those that are, from my experience, that are critical. So that include the GPS location of the trucks, which definitely is an commodity at this point. Basically, there is no truck that goes to the marine sea terminals that is not equipped with the GPS location tracker. Generating invoice, it's by the nature, it's likely is a product, either SaaS or on-prem accounting software. And 2 other elements of the system, which is dispatch matching, where you take the records from the trucking ERP system, match it against what the trucks are doing on the road, is definitely a custom one. But there are a couple of research projects that are happening at the same time, which are more on the genesis. And then historic traffic information. Today, we're doing very rudimentary analysis, but there's definitely a need for us to do more. But likely, we will not be using any custom software. Likely, it will be something that will be a product that will upload data sets, do analysis, and extract information from the statistical machine learning perspective. So that's kind of what our group completed.
How do you see things moving? Like, where are the arrows on here? If you had a bit more time to predict the future, what does it look like 5 years from now?
Dispatch so it's interesting that we don't have too many competitors. The solution by itself appears to be fairly simple in the nature, but the difficulty that we're facing is accuracy of the information and making sure that the integration that we have with the GPS data providers, with the truck ERP systems providers, the business processes that within the trucking companies, that they provide information that is correct. This is something that is can be quite challenging. So what I see in the future is probably dispatch matching has a potential of moving into more of a product, but maybe not. The historic traffic information definitely would probably be in product or rental space. And since we're looking only at the kind of a smaller window from the supply chain perspective, how the containers are delivered, there's like a lot of to the left from the time and a lot of to the right as well. So we will be adding actually additional features that will appear here from the red stickies and yellow stickies. So I see them that the functionality of the system will grow. So what we have is more of a snapshot of what as it is right now, and we'll have more functionality added up in the future, next 1 to 5 years.
So basically, those two components in your custom built move to the right, and then suddenly your whole focus as a company changes onto something brand new.
Correct.
Cool.
This is exactly my question. In what is moving your focus? Why are you still working for this company? I mean, we are not truckers, but IT people. What are we doing in a company which is everything which it needs? It's buying.
Well, I'm working for consulting company that actually builds out the product, but we have an interesting model when basically we have a mothership for which I'm working for, and the business that owns this particular product is a separate entity. So it's a spoke on the wheel. So we have a hub, that's where I am, and we have a spoke that it develops the product. So as soon as we achieve the business viability, kind of the product is managed and delivered and supported by this separate entity. And this kind of model, I see that this model continue to be evolving, like when we add more features, etc. I think that the Wardley Maps will add a tremendous value as once you develop it, for example, once, and then you keep revisiting it every 3 months, maybe every 6 months, depending on your timeline and how dynamic, how many changes you actually foresee in the future, and then kind of move these stickies around and see the dynamics, where it's actually going, as well as based on your perspective of the market, you can also say, okay, I see that new players are appearing, for example, in the product or rental space that actually moving my yellow stickies to the middle or to the right. What should I do about it? Should I continue investing in these activities, or should I stop doing something like that? I see this not as a one-off deal, but I see it as something as a movie or cartoon that you should look at over time and see what's going on as so which blends the IT interests of mine with business interests of mine.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was thinking about is that often it's you don't build stuff yourself, but you actually integrate a lot. And there you could add in the APIs, because a lot of things works fantastic, like you have advanced salary systems and all other systems, but the APIs are lousy. You need to take that into account when you're doing all this. So maybe that could be a yellow sticker into this diagram, some form of APIs.
That's true. So if we can mention the API economy when you effectively start providing the services, becoming more of a backend system with someone else. For example, the historic traffic information, it's one of the APIs that we currently expose to the government agencies that, or port authorities that using this information today to basically observe the trends in the traffic at the marine sea terminals. Because we collect this information and we've been holding this information for almost 4 years, if no more.
Sorry, my power was off. Didn't have power anymore. It means new stuff means I can start with a totally new product.
My understanding is yes, you can start with totally new product and start overlaying this imagined functionality, because that's what we did, I think, in the beginning, in the first half of the session. You can take the existing product and overlay it here, and then use it more of a as a high-level capture of where the product is evolving. So multi-dimensional roadmap to the product.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that was it. Do we have some more questions? Nick just left for a few seconds, but I'll stop his participation. So, any reactions so far? How was it? For some, it was the first time, I guess. For others, it was a couple of times. Any reactions?
Short.
Short, yeah.
all exercises are good. I mean, you have to define, for instance, we had a virtual classroom, but what do you mean by that? So you are forced to somehow form a ubiquitous language, but you could say all these kinds of exercises help in that.
Yeah. So I am surprised how far everyone got in just 45 minutes, to be honest. A lot of insights. Is that the same feeling for you?
It was a good idea that the others had that focus in the mapping in just a subset of the whole domain.
Cool. So, I want to wrap it up. It's been 2.5 hours, more than 2.5 hours. So thank you all for joining in this highly collaborative online session. I must say I had a lot of fun, even though I wasn't participating, but I felt almost close to a real meetup. So thank you all for joining and participating in this. People on the stream could also enjoy. There's still 19 people watching, so we were entertaining enough, it seems. So thank you. And just so you know, in 2 weeks we'll have the DDD, the Distributed Domain-Driven Design Day. CFP is now open until Tuesday because we heard Kandinsky, unfortunately, will not go through. Same with Ancrafts this year. They will do it next year, and we'll try to combine and make it a full, fun participant day. So there's still CFP open. Please go to the website, and I hope to see you there in 2 weeks. So thank you, and I'm going to close the stream now.